This is public. Okay, we should be live. And there you go, Amber. Should be all yours.
I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone. The good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful. But we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed. We have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much, feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness of men, cries out for universal brotherhood and the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world. Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes me torture, imprison innocent. Those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of grief. The bitterness of men fear the way of hate of men will pass. The power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men, with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery. Fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke, in the 17th kingdom of God is within man. Not one man, nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power. The power to create machines. The power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. To make this life a wonderful adventure. And in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world. Decent work. Give men a chance to work that will give you the future and old age and security. By the product of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill their promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national values, to do away with greed, and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
Well, hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the second of 3 open POTUS forums hosted by the Green Party of Alaska. I am your host, Meda DeWitt, and I'm calling in from Tlingit-Ani. This is Occoquan in Juneau, Alaska, the capital of Alaska State. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we anchored into this programming is that we have the land acknowledgement of the Indigenous people. And wherever you are, wherever you may be living, working, playing, everywhere is Indigenous land. You're on traditional homelands of the Indigenous people who were stewards for this environment for thousands and thousands of years. And so as we move forward into this movement, we want to move forward collectively and together. So we give gratitude for the Indigenous people, the caretakers of Tlingit-Ani and traditional lands of Alaska and Turtle Island. And there's Indigenous people from the entire world, all over the earth. We give gratitude for the stewardship. I would like to introduce our guest moderator, Montre Moore. Montre is involved in public outreach specialist with communities, leader, and in the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For over 10 years, Mr. Moore has worked with organizations like NAACP and the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission to bring diversity and inclusion to organizational development and fiscal strategic planning. Thank you for being here today, Montre. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, hello and good afternoon, everyone. So excited to be a part of this great conversation. This is such an important time for our country, and we have 2 amazing candidates here that are going to share with us their thoughts, their ideals, and exactly why they should be president of the United States. So I would like to introduce both Brittany Jones as well as Jasmine Sherman. We're going to allow both of them time to introduce themselves. We're also going to allow them to have several questions that we prepared for them. We're going to allow 4 minutes, each of them to answer the questions. And then we're going to allow 1 minute of rebuttal, going back and forth to make sure that we get a full understanding of their answers. So without further ado, again, I would like to introduce Brittany Jones. She's going to have 2 minutes to share with us a little bit about herself before we get into our questions this afternoon. Mrs. Jones?
Hello, thank you for having me on. My name is Brittany Jones. I am running in the 2024 elections as a completely unaffiliated candidate. I am a poverty level person who has experience running businesses. I'm a veteran, and being unaffiliated means I'm not bought out by corporations, political action committees, parties. I don't have to follow party bylaws. And this is a truly grassroots campaign where it's the people who are making their voices heard through the work I am doing. I stand for the complete and clear separation of church and state, working to make America truly safe for our people, and ending the genocide happening on American soil through actually enforcing treaties, expanding treaties, and bringing accountability for the treaty violations that First Nations have faced since the beginning of our country. And that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Now we have Jasmine Sherman. Jasmine?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jasmine Sherman. My platform is BASIC. Provide you with your basic human needs. That's guaranteed housing, universal health care, free education, and universal basic income. You don't need me to tell you about the problems you're experiencing in your local community or your problems that we're experiencing as a nation. What you need to know is how I'm going to help you and when I'm going to help you. You have enough politicians just giving you words. You actually need action. Thank you so much. I look forward to communicating with you all and answering the other questions during the debate.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, ladies. So again, we're going to have 2 segments, then we're going to have a break. But we're going to start off with a segment of questions. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to elaborate on these questions. And then again, we're going to have 1 minute for rebuttal where it is necessary and required. So we did do a rock, paper, scissors, and the first question is going to go to Jasmine. Jasmine, this is a very interesting time. Why are you running for president rather than common council, school board? What is it that the presidency of the United States is drawing you to it at this point?
We have already seen on the local level in Tennessee, representatives be silenced. We have seen on the federal level, Rashida Tlaib being silenced. What we haven't seen is people who commit genocide being silenced. The things that I want to make happen for Americans do require presidential powers. And I know that there's a myth that the presidency is a puppet position and they don't have any real power. Thanks to the Patriot Act and consistent powers being given by Congress and the Senate to the president, there is a lot more power than people realize. And I plan to run, win, and use that power to benefit Americans. The same way Joe Biden used executive orders to build Donald Trump's border wall, waiving 26 laws, is the same way I can provide you with housing, healthcare, and education, and term limits and age caps. We know what we need. We know what we have to do. We need actual action. And I'm running to provide real change. You've done enough talking over the years. We've set up enough commissions. People need change. And that's why I'm running for president, to execute and deliver that change.
Thank you. Brittany, same question to you. Why are you running for president?
I'm running for president because I've studied history extensively in college. And the things that I've noticed are this country is following the same patterns and pathways that have been repeated historically, where now archaeologists and anthropologists study the ruins left behind, or they became a completely different nation. And following that, the way this country is doing it, it's going to end in a bloodbath. And I'm trying to stop that bloodbath. And there's certain things that only the president can do. I couldn't do it at a state level. I couldn't do it at a more local level because then only that state would be safe. We have to do it at a federal level. We have to do it quickly, and only the president has that type of power, unfortunately. And to get that, it's through the people. The people vote in the president that they feel most represents their ideals. And it's that person that is supposed to get the work done for the people, not fighting Congress, not fighting the Supreme Court. There's a very specific job that the president does in the executive branch with the cabinet over our institutions, from healthcare to the police force to the prison system to education. That is what we are supposed to be focusing, not butting our heads against Congress over every single legislative bill that they try to pass.
Thank you. Is there any rebuttal to this question from either candidate? See not, we will move on to our next question.
Sorry, yes, I do have one. I apologize.
Go right ahead. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Executive orders are not blanket orders that you can just do. They're not to create new legislation, which means executive orders cannot be used to create things like term limits. We still have to work within the confines that Congress provides. Unfortunately, that Congress controls the budget. Congress is the one who creates new legislation. Congress is the only one who could create term limits for themselves. We can't do that as president unilaterally.
May I rebut? Is it my turn?
Yes, Mrs. Sherman, you have 1 minute.
Still not a Mrs. Totally non-binary. Just call me Jasmine. It works for me. But for everyone else that heard that, I am not offering anything that is not already done. Thanks to the Senate in 1972 passing a law for judges in regard to age and term limits, I am only making sure that those laws that they have already given us for specific branches of government apply to everyone, which is exactly in the presidential purview. Thanks, Brittany. Keep trying, though.
Okay, our next question. At the end of your first 4 years after becoming president, what do you envision as being your greatest accomplishment in your first 4 years? Brittany?
The greatest accomplishment that I could see is actually seeing First Nations being able to stand without the United States government's foot on their neck. Right now, they have to ask for permission to expand their infrastructure, build schools, build housing, improve their streets. It should not be like that. First Nations are supposed to be sovereign nations, and we need to see them with true freedom. And that is a root cause for a lot of the symptoms we're seeing in America today with the environmental issues, the LGBTQI2S plus issues, considering Two Spirits were the first LGBTQI2S plus on this continent before colonization. And we have seen suppression, and genocide on our country, on this soil towards First Nations. And it's resulted in this ripple effect through slavery, through genocide, through racism that has crippled our country. And we need the greatest accomplishment to that is seeing true sovereignty and true freedom with First Nations and following First Nations lead in how things should be done in this country, especially with the environment for our future generations.
Thank you. Jasmine, at the end of the first 4 years of your first term, what would you like to envision as your main accomplishment?
I have provided for working Americans their basic needs. People need housing, healthcare, and education, and universal basic income. My platform's not fancy. It's to provide Americans with the things that they already work for and pay taxes on. You just need someone to reallocate it. And don't worry, Brittany, there's precedent for it when you want to rebut this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany, you do have 1 minute if you choose to rebut Jasmine's answer.
I actually had no rebuttal, so I'm ready for the next question.
Okay, excellent. The next question. This question is going to go to Jasmine first. Considering the divide on climate change, whether it's real or if it's simply a dramatic talking point for Democrats, what is your stance and how will you, after you win the presidency, bring our country together around this belief?
Yeah, so I am not a scientist, but I do listen to them. Scientists and data scientists and climate scientists are actively letting us know that we have a climate issue. It doesn't require more study. We know what the problems are, and we have multiple ways to fix them. What I plan to do when I'm president is make sure that we go back to using glass instead of plastics. We need to also use aluminum. We need to remove latex from the medical and the restaurant field and make sure that it's also not in our educational facilities. There are already a ton of things that people can read about on my platform at jasminesherman.com about the environment. But the fastest thing that we can do is actually listen to the professionals who are telling us what we need to do. We know that we have too much moisture in our atmosphere. We know that we need to stop using fossil fuels and switch to renewable energy. My platform embraces everything that the scientists have already laid out for us and make sure that regular Americans can take advantage of this, especially when using this opportunity to make everything ADA compliant, which will help us with our renewables energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany, your turn. You have 4 minutes.
For the environment, we need to focus on removing the heat island effects that we have today. We have cities removing these natural byways, these natural pathways for animals to migrate, for water to flow, and replacing it with cement. And it's creating this heat effect that is detrimental to our environment. And then they're overusing the water as well. We also need to focus on more renewable energies, not lithium batteries and mining that destroys our environment. We see a huge push right now for refineries and mines across the United States, and these negatively affect First Nations extremely badly, not only committing more chances for the MMIW crisis to expand, but by polluting our environment even more than it already is. I encourage people to look into nuclear fusion, not nuclear fission. It is a completely different type of nuclear energy that is clean and unending. Right now, you could think of it as like when the computer was first created, it was the size of an entire room, basically. That's where we are at right now with nuclear fusion, and it's going to take investment and time to bring it down to a more compact form that we could use in everyday practices. Outside of that, we still have solar, we still have wind energy. We cannot be refining materials. Batteries take tons of earth to get enough lithium just to create one battery. And then they can't be recycled after their 7 to 10 year lifespan. We are destroying our environment more under the guise of being more environmentally friendly, and that needs to stop. We need more transparent options for the people to learn about. And I do encourage people to do their research and look into alternative sources for energy and for a cleaner environment.
Thank you. Jasmine, you have 1 minute if you choose to rebut. Okay. Next question. This question is going to go to Brittany. How does your administration plan to bring justice, equity, and diversity and inclusion to marginalized people?
This is a multi-pronged issue, from education to healthcare, to our police force, to our prison system. We need to move away from a private prison system, which the president has the power to do, from not renewing private prison contracts, looking for contract violations and canceling those contracts, moving to a federally public prison system that is rehabilitative rather than punitive, to create a more, productive system, because these people get into prison and then they have to go to probation and then they have to go to whatever courses that the court judges that they have to go to, and then they have to pay for that out of their own pocket. And it's a system set up for repeat failure. And we see this in our education system as well. We call it the school to prison pipeline. We are removing education and like the creative arts and the funner classes that are still critically important to the development of the human brain, especially in children. And we're taking that away, and it's creating a mindless workforce and more people for the prison labor system. We can create independent task force throughout the cabinet for each branch to go through the complaints that have been submitted, to go through the human rights violations that are happening, to go through and press charges against cops that are out there blatantly murdering people with no repercussions. We can remove the racist, the bigoted, the sexist people from their positions through federal prosecution for their discriminatory policies, their discriminatory actions. And we really have to rip the Band-Aid off and move quickly with that.
Thank you. Jasmine, you have 4 minutes.
Can you repeat the question? I apologize.
Yes. Let's see here. Okay, we're going to the next one. How does your administration plan to bring justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion to marginalized people?
Oh, I don't. My platform is about basic human rights. If I sat up here and told you that I could bring people together, that would be a lie. What I can do is make sure that marginalized people have their basic needs met and universal basic income to do things that they want to do. What I can do is make sure that everyone has an opportunity to create a union in their workplace to make sure that inclusion occurs. I do not, and if I could, I would, but I do not have the presidential power to make a bigot less bigoted. I cannot create places for Black people or gay people or Spanish people within a private employer's opportunity or business. But what I can do is make sure that you have everything you need to start deciding which employers you actually want to work to. I can make sure that people have choice with their purchasing power, but I cannot make anything more DEI than it already is. I can make sure that people have access to mental health care and learning about equitable resources. But again, I can't fix that, and I would be lying if I said I could.
Thank you. Brittany, you have 1 minute to rebut.
Considering the fact that there is already anti-discrimination legislation in place, it is absolutely within the power of the president to enforce employment standards. And even in private businesses, they still have to follow the federal anti-discrimination legislation. So you can't not hire someone because they're gay or because they're Black or because they are not Christian. That is illegal, and it is fully within the power of the executive branch to enforce that. And that is how we need consequences for the people who think there are no consequences for their actions towards the marginalized communities, or else those actions won't stop.
Jasmine, you have 1 minute if you choose to take it.
I mean, I appreciate the minute, but at the end of the day, for people to say, I want to file a lawsuit against my employer, they need to be able to make sure they have housing and money coming in to pay their bills. They need to be able to make sure they can pay said lawyer, because we all love to talk about pro bono lawyers, but they don't usually appear often for enough of us when we have suits. So again, I do understand what is being said, but if you ask what my priorities are, those are not my priorities. My priorities are to make sure people have their basic needs so they can get more leverage in the workplace. And that's just me being candid.
Thank you. Next question. It seems as if there is a new war or a threat of war breaking out each day. And in the midst of it, the United States seems to always pop up. What is your position on America's role in foreign policy during your administration? Let's go to Jasmine.
Americans under a Sherman administration would be keeping our tax dollars stateside. We will be bombing brown people less. We have to fix our excitement when it comes to imperialism. In a Sherman administration, there is no imperialism. Our goal would be to close all 800 military bases, not braces, bases, and bring all of our troops home. There is work to be done right here. And that's how I would begin our negotiations with our trade partners around the world. We have to start on equal footing. Right now, we come in under some oppressive leanings right now based on past administrations. We know Joe Biden is an imperialist, and we know Donald Trump was an imperialist. And so we have to actually build back trust with the individuals across the globe. Right now, we have people who are lining up to weaken the value of our dollar, and we will not get that restored unless we make amends. And that's what my foreign policy does. And you can read about it at jasminesherman.com.
Thank you. Brittany.
My platform also consists of closing foreign military bases. We spent over $55 billion in 2022 on foreign military bases. That money can be reallocated to taking care of our veterans, fixing the base housing problems that we currently have, getting support services for our active members within our service, within our military service, because currently as a former veteran, there are not enough services. The CDC, the child care centers for the military members open at a 9 to 5 pace. when we have to be in at drill at 2 a.m. or CQ duty for 24 hours. And it's just not feasible for a family to be able to serve in the military. And it's showing low recruitment numbers with throughout our military. So we need to consolidate, we need to reallocate funding, and we need to do better for our troops and for our people here. Every war that we have been in, we have never fully left that country. We are still there, sticking our noses into other people's governments, selling weapons to both sides of a conflict in another country so that we can take their resources out from under their nose for below market value and stripping them of their power. And we need to stop that. We need to bring all of that back home. We need to build up the infrastructure here, create a better place for Americans and other people that live in our country, and not be so focused on global colonization. We need to move away from that mindset.
Thank you. Jasmine, you have 1 minute if you choose to take it.
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, next question. This question is going to go to Brittany, and it's regarding criminal justice. Criminal justice in this country continues to ravage communities across this nation. Where do you stand on criminal justice reform? And how do you plan to bring Black and Brown communities back together after the aftermath of time served? Brittany?
This goes back to moving away from the private prison system and working on a rehabilitative prison system. Also, if we stop putting people in prison for having weed, like we should legalize and regulate drugs on a nationwide scale. Over 24 other countries have decriminalized drugs, and they've seen a huge reduction in overdose deaths, addiction rates, and other safety issues. If we did that, not only would we create a new tax revenue to go into something like universal health care, but we would reduce the number of inmates and repeat offenders, because to me, that's not a crime. And we shouldn't be punished for trying to survive out here and finding our own coping methods, as unhealthy as they are. It's not up to me to dictate what somebody else does with their own body after they turn 18. And we have to realize this justice system that we have in place. The police force grew from the old slave patrols that were still around after slavery ended. They have laws like loitering laws are absolutely based in racism. There's so many unconstitutional laws against somebody for the color of their skin. And in the Constitution itself, it still calls First Nations, Indigenous people of America, merciless Indian savages. This has to be addressed at a root issue. We have to get the racist cops out because they are targeting our marginalized communities indiscriminately. We have to move away from the private system. We have to get better training in Eugene, Oregon, actually in Oregon in general, there's a program called CAHOOTS. So when you make a mental wellness phone call, a cop doesn't respond. Somebody with a mental health field background responds first. And they get to try to de-escalate the situation before an armed officer is ever called on the scene. We should have that at a nationwide level. You would see less deaths like that of, the name just escaped me. It was a transgender Korean woman who was shot twice in the chest and once in the head for a mental health check. And the whole entire conflict lasted 57 seconds. That is not de-escalation. That is not a wellness check. We need to work on that.
Thank you. Jasmine.
Can you please repeat the question for me?
Yes. Criminal justice in this country continues to ravage communities across our nation. Where do you stand on criminal justice reform? And how do we get Black and Brown communities reconnected after the aftermath of time served?
So one of the things that my platform does is abolish prisons. It is time that people who are guilty get the treatment that they deserve. That's not happening within the prison system, private or government, regular state-run prisons. That's not happening. What's happening is we're using them for slave labor. Abolishing prisons would allow us to end slavery in America once and for all officially. For people who are guilty of the crimes that they have committed, they would be moved to a house arrest system. There would still be people to watch them in the domicile that they are in, but it would stop them from being dehumanized and mistreated and allow them to get the rehabilitation that they deserve. What I propose that we do is abolish police. I do believe that we have enough data to show that it doesn't work. The current structure solves less than 4% of crime, and it's over militarized. What I would like us to do is switch to a community task force. And the way we bring marginalized people back into feeling safe in their communities is allow them to govern themselves. So for anybody who is a law enforcement person watching this and going, well, what happens to my job? If you still feel called to protect and serve, you would actually get an opportunity to join your local community task force. The Supreme Court has already told us that police do not have to protect humans. And we were able to see in real time during the Vivaldi massacre that they do not protect innocent lives. The people that did protect those lives or did go in after those children were the people who lived in that community, the parents and the relatives of the students within that classroom. And so all we are trying to do is allow the people who really keep us safe to continue keeping us safe. If you are a law enforcement officer, you would just do it within your community, with your children and your neighbors. I think that this will help us strengthen not only the economy, but the bond within the communities that we live. Because again, it would be regular people policing their own streets, being compensated for watching their own neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany, you have 1 minute if you choose to take it to rebut.
No, thank you.
Okay. Next question, and this is going to go to Jasmine. Where would your administration stand on a national minimum wage and how much?
So I don't believe in a minimum wage. I believe that we need to go beyond that and do an index living wage. The way that would work is we assess what the cost is for where you live. And we let your employers know what that cost is for them to provide you with your basic human needs. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is $23 to be broke in Charlotte, North Carolina per hour. So the way that would work is Walmart would have to raise their prices to $23 an hour minimum. Like that's what it would be for every worker. If Walmart says we have to raise our prices with an index living wage, they would also have to raise their wages. You can't only raise prices without raising wages. If it's more expensive for you, the employer, it's more expensive for the consumer, your employee. And so that is how we balance it out. And it keeps employers from, price gouging at the same time, because every time they raise those prices, they would have to raise those wages. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany, where does your administration stand on a nationwide minimum wage and how much?
I have a similar stance. It depends on where you live. In Oregon, it's $28 minimum to live comfortably off of one job, not even comfortably, bare minimum. And we need to do it based off of where you live. And that's down to the very town you live in, not the county. Because in Drain, Oregon or Elkton, Oregon, the cost of living is different than in Eugene, Oregon or Portland, Oregon. And then it's different in California and the different states. And I know this puts a lot of stress on small businesses that are currently paying the absolute federal minimum wage for their employees. But you have to remember that if, as a former business owner myself, I set it aside to fully campaign. If you can't afford to pay your employees living wage, then you should not have employees yet. You should absolutely be doing the work yourself, because we need to move away from making other people struggle for our profit. And that goes for small business all the way up to the corporations. So yes, we need to adjust the living wage for where you are actually living and working, because you could live in one area and work in another. So it's a sliding scale is what I call it, a sliding scale for your wage, depending on where you work, where you live, and what is actually needed for that area.
Thank you. Jasmine, you have 1 minute if you choose to take it.
No, thank you.
Okay. Our next question. What would your administration do to tackle America's housing crisis that's already in motion? We're going to go to Jasmine first on this one.
I'm housing people that are houseless, right? Like, so one of the things that I'm doing is, I'm not gonna lie, I am not personally doing it, but Tanda Blue Bear and the indigenous people that have volunteered are working on a land back policy. By us giving the land back to the indigenous people of Turtle Island, it allows us to eliminate property tax, pay the people who already own homes the money they paid into their homes, and allow them to remain there. What we do within the first 90 days of my administration is buy all of the homes that are on the market already for sale. And then we're putting people who are houseless into them. The fastest way to end houselessness in America is to give everyone housing. Now, there are 3 phases to my housing program because it takes care of the houseless first, people in unsafe situations domestically, and actually living in places that are not safe. We know people who are living in structures that are not safe. And the last 3rd phase is for people who just want to move somewhere else. There is someone screaming in a rural town that wants to go to a city, and there's someone in a city that wants to go to a rural town. By making sure that people can move freely across the country and building a high-speed rail, we give Americans not only their life back, but their autonomy back. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany.
I have a homelessness plan up on my TikTok and on my website, jonesforpresident2024.com, and in my 100-day plan. This is not giving away housing for free. It is similar to Habitat for Humanity, where they put sweat equity into the homes. We have enough abandoned, dilapidated homes that we can refurbish them and get them safe for their neighborhoods, improve the market value of the homes around them, improve neighborhood safety, and get people off the streets. Once we have the homelessness issue under control, we can actually open up that program to anyone in America who wants a more affordable cost of living and a path to home ownership. We cannot just give homes away for free on Native land because we can't speak for Indigenous communities. No one person speaks for all the communities, right? So we have to work hand in hand and make sure that what's already here is utilized so that we can improve our neighborhoods, improve the safety, get people off the streets, have a path for home ownership, and still boost our economy. Because not only would refurbishing these homes create more jobs for tradesmen, but it would get people off the streets, and their mortgage would be based off their actual expenses, actual income. And if they're too disabled, they can't work, but they're not on disability, we would have avenues to get people health care and access to help to get disability or veterans benefits or other forms of income if they need to get a job. That is the way forward with this, so that we don't collapse our economy, we don't make any situations worse, and we don't cause any conflict within the various nations that live in this country.
Thank you.
I
Jasmine,
actually want to rebut. Yeah.
Okay, you have 1 moment. 1 minute.
Yeah, so Americans, you already spend your tax money on housing, healthcare, and education, but for other countries, there's no reason to make you pay more. There's no reason to make you wait. We already have houses that are on the market that we can use American tax dollars that we send to other countries to make sure they don't have to pay rent, mortgages, or healthcare or education fees. All we have to do is stop paying other people to live the American dream and let Americans live it here. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany, you have 1 minute.
To me, that sounds like the government becoming a corporation, and not just a corporation, but a monopoly on the housing market. And we can't allow that to happen. That destroys the free market. I do agree with removing finances from other countries and focusing on here, but we cannot allow monopolies to happen. We already see what's happening with the corporations that we have today that are already monopolizing the housing, especially the foreign entities that are buying residential homes here and leaving them sitting empty for their assets company overseas.
Thank you. Next question. What is your understanding of the duties of the president as it relates to our nation's tribal communities? We're going to go to Jasmine first on this one.
Well, I'm definitely not going to follow the precedents set by past presidents. They don't give a flip about Indigenous communities. We have not done anything historically, presidentially, for Indigenous communities, except for maybe an award here and there, a trophy here and there. Indigenous people want their lands back. They don't want niceties. They don't want to hear from me. They want their shit back. And my responsibility is to make sure that they have their stuff back. That's it. Thank you.
Brittany?
Because of colonization, we do have to factor in the fact that the president has the ability to unilaterally enforce treaties. Meaning, as soon as the president takes office, we can immediately stop corporations from violating those treaties, like the pipelines, the Willow Project, the highway that's being approved for Alaska right now, the mining and oil refineries that are being pushed all across the United States. We need to enforce those treaties, expand those treaties, which the president can call the Senate to session to negotiate new expanded treaties which would absolutely include land back, true sovereignty, true freedom, the harm reduction for the pollution that's going into the environment. The Navajo Nation is facing an extreme emergency right now considering access to water. There's extreme homelessness, there's poverty levels, there's lack of education because of the government's foot on the Indigenous people's necks. And we need to fix that.
Jasmine, you have 1 minute.
Everyone knows, everyone who's Indigenous knows that there are multiple treaties that have been disingenuous. And I mean that in promising one nation the land of another nation and vice versa. The treaties that we have currently are not worth being upheld because a lot of them do not provide Indigenous people with sovereignty, and they're not all genuine. A lot of them provide other people's lands for Indigenous communities instead of providing them with their actual lands. And we know they want their actual lands back. And that's my goal. Thank you.
Brittany, you have 1 minute.
That is why within my first 100 days, I would be calling the leadership of these nations to speak to each nation with the Senate of the United States to figure out what each nation needs, because each nation could need something completely different than the one their neighbor or the one across the United States. We cannot just speak unilaterally for all of them. They need space to speak. We need to hold that space as President of the United States to facilitate that transfer.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to take a question from our chat from Emily. In regards to healthcare, what would be a sensible plan to handle the growing depleting of medications for AHDH and mental health, etc.? And we're going to go to Brittany on this question first.
This is something I'm still looking into that was brought to my attention about ADHD medication. This to me seems like a corporate ploy to be able to charge more for those medicines. Congress absolutely needs to get on the ball and stop corporations from price gouging medications. It is more expensive in America to get the medications that you need than it is in almost any other country, despite the fact that we are one of the most advanced nations in this world. That needs to stop. We need to focus on making sure that people have access to mental health care. This would also decrease the gun violence that we see in our nation. And we need to stop with the shaming for the mental health care as well, because men are shamed if they go and get a therapist or a counselor. And that leads to the toxic masculinity, the suppression of feelings, which results in violence. We need to have grants for mental health care workers to be able to get into the field and have a better staff to patient ratio. Right now, as a mother of a disabled child myself, it is extremely hard to find a psychiatrist. He has attenuated psychosis syndrome. He did not start treatment until he was 13 years old, even though he started having hallucinations, and auditory and visual, when he was 5. So this is a struggle I'm very, very well acquainted with. And it just gets brushed aside too often, and it needs to be made the mental health of America needs to be made a focus.
Thank you so much. Jasmine.
One of the beautiful powers that the president has is the ability to command industries make products. I believe the exact thing it falls under is the Defense Production Act. I would utilize the Defense Production Act to make pharmaceutical companies produce the ADHD medicines that we know that we need, that have been in short supply for the last 9 months. We already know that there is an issue in this country. All the president has to do, the same way during COVID, they had the ability to get corporations to make masks and generate things that we needed for COVID, is the same way that we can make sure that corporations provide our citizens with the medicine that they need today. We don't need as much Viagra as we think we do, but we definitely need ADHD medicine. One of the things that my universal healthcare plan does do is provide prescriptions to all Americans. We already know that American tax dollars fund the research for all of the pharmaceuticals that we take. And then a corporation comes in, buys the patent, and then they start to produce those drugs that we've researched and spent our money on for profit. We just have to stop that. And that's part of the part of my universal healthcare plan, to make sure we provide Americans with prescriptions at no cost to them, because they've already paid for it in their taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany, you have 1 minute if you choose to take it.
No, thank you.
Okay. We're going to go back to the chat. We have, we just lost it. It is Rachel is interested in information about access to the ballot from both candidates. So we're going to start with Jasmine talking about access to the ballots.
So I am pleased to say that I have currently 48 states of ballot access. What we are doing is a multi-pronged approach, working with multiple political parties. We've just added a Libertarian Party to our negotiations to make sure that I have ballot access in all 50 states. Part of the reason I am coming to Alaska in June, thank you, Robert, is to make sure that I secure my ballot access in Alaska. Working with multiple political parties has allowed me to gain ballot access without spending a lot of taxpayer dollars. And so I plan to do that. Any state where I lose the nomination for the Green Party or the Peace and Freedom Party or the Libertarian Party or other parties that I partner with, we would use to get ballot access through the Unicorn Party. So my goal is to be on all 50 states ballots, but I am currently struggling with Alaska and Georgia, to be upfront. Thank you.
Okay. Brittany.
It's a little different for an independent candidate that's not a part of a party. We have different requirements, different filing deadlines, different things that we have to do, different amount of signatures that we have to get. I'm not backed by parties, so I'm not getting party dollars. I'm not getting corporate dollars. I'm not getting political action committee dollars. This is a truly grassroots campaign because no matter how you look at it, even if a party is paying for ballot access or to get the petition signatures, it's still using donations from the taxpayers. Unfortunately, running for president does take money no matter where it comes from. I prefer it to be unfiltered, not making me beholden to party bylaws or corporation or bought out by corporations. It's the footwork to get there and get this access that is the problem, because for Democrats and Republicans with such a large party, they easily have access. And for somebody third party or independent, we have to do that work ourselves. The different deadlines, different requirements, it should be the same regardless of your party affiliation. And that is one thing I'm working on in the federal courts, is to make sure that it's equal and across the board for everyone. And that has to be done. It won't be done by 2024 because we all know the federal courts likes to drag their feet when it comes to actual work. And so hopefully it will smooth the way for more candidates in 2028. But I do intend to be on the ballot in every single state, whether that's as a write-in candidate or with my name on the ballot.
Thank you very much. Is there any rebuttal?
I got a rebut. So for anybody that knows the Sherman campaign, you know that I'm not getting dollars from the political parties. You know, the Green Party has $0 and 0 cents. Jill Stein is the front runner. She's only been able to raise $150K. Political parties don't have money. Even the Republican Party is broke. The way the Sherman campaign has been able to raise funds is we have been selling our own food and working for that money. We have received some donations from TikTok and other social media, but all the money we've got, the 20K we have raised, is from hard work and us doing it. So I know some political parties can give people money, but I have not had that experience where anybody is giving my beautiful mug any dollars outside of my specific donors who haven't been able to donate more than $26.50 each donation. Thank you all so far.
Brittany, you have 1 minute if you choose to take it.
It's not about the candidate receiving money. Getting ballot access, traveling to different states, even if you don't receive the money yourself, it is still money being spent on the side of that campaign. So no matter how you look at it, money is being spent. Travel costs money. Getting petition signatures and having people out there can cost money. The filing fees cost money. Oklahoma is $35,000. You cannot tell me that there is no money coming from somewhere for that, whether it's grassroots or from a party paying for that ballot access. It is still being paid for.
Yeah, we earned it. Do you not listen?
Okay, next question. So we're going to go to Brittany for this. How do you define the American dream in the 21st century?
I don't have a definition for it. I guess it'd just be to be able to survive without having to choose between healthcare or food. I've been hungry more days than I haven't been hungry. It shouldn't be like that. We should just be able to live without worrying about where our next meal comes from, if we're going to lose our home, if we're going to lose our children, if we're going to lose our jobs and then not lose our cars. It shouldn't be like that. We should be able to live freely and safely without those fears hovering over us.
Thank you. Jasmine.
Right now, the current American dream is being able to get by. It's a month-to-month dream. You don't know where you're going next month with your rent, but you know you made it this month. Really, it's kind of sad. The bar is very low, but the American dream is just being able to live paycheck to paycheck currently. And we need to fix that. People shouldn't have to live like that. But you know, I know, we all know people are living like that. And more people, because they don't know that third parties exist, because they don't know that I exist or y'all exist, they feel like they're stuck and there's nobody that is helping them. So I do hope that through this debate and other debates and other means of communication, we can let the American public know we are about to kill this American dream. We do need it to be a place where you can have a home and raise a family. But for now, the current American dream is just living till my next paycheck.
Thank you. Brittany, you have 1 minute if you choose to take it.
No, thank you.
This will be the last question for this segment of the debate, and it's talking about our cities. How will your administration work to make our cities safer without making them police states? We're going to go to Jasmine first on this one.
We are going to provide people with money for their basic human needs. We're also going to change the way our cities are set up. Our cities need to be mixed, walkable neighborhoods. You should be able to eat in your neighborhood, get your groceries in your neighborhood, and work in your neighborhood. I'm not saying that that's a mandatory thing, but it should be available. We have too many people living in cities that are actually food deserts. So part of my education plan is to make sure we put actual vegetable gardens in every classroom that'll enable people who are in the city to have access to more readily available fresh vegetables. Another thing we do is, again, provide people with guaranteed housing so people who don't want to be in cities can leave cities. My environmental and infrastructure plan takes the city environment from the concrete jungle and converts it into a vertical jungle. There are a lot of things that we can do aesthetically to change cities, and there are a lot of things we can do financially. I do not approve, forgive me, but I don't want to buy into the idea that crime is up when we know that crime is down. Now, where places we have a lot of police, they usually do cause a lot of crime, but we do plan to abolish police, and that's going to make cities feel a lot safer as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany.
We can make our cities safer by making it more visible at night. As Jasmine said, walkable cities, we need a mixture of that as well, driving everywhere. And we have the pedestrian crashes that are happening, and the police do cause more issues than they solve, especially within the cities. So we need to focus on community engagement, creating gardens, like instead of lawns, having food forests for front lawns, green roofscapes, and making sure that we have that sense of community within our cities so that we don't have to resort to police force, especially if we have something like Cahoots nationwide where the mental health can be addressed before an armed officer is ever called, especially with how many drug addicts we have on the street today using whatever drug of choice openly, and the police aren't doing anything for that anyways. So we do need to make it safer. We need to make it more visible. We need to get more mental health services out there, and we need to make sure that the cities are more accessible.
Thank you. Jasmine, you have 1 minute if you choose to take it.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the first portion. I thank both candidates for their wonderful answers. We're going to turn it back over to Meda, and she's going to usher in the second half of our program. So thank you and stay tuned.
Yes, thank you, Montre. I appreciate it. And next we're going to hear from Chris Tuck. Chris Tuck is running for mayor of Anchorage in Alaska. And he is going to, I think he's on and he's ready. So welcome, Chris, to this programming. We're looking forward to meeting with you.
Thank you very much. I'm actually logged in as William. Sorry about that. I had an intern that was working on my computer for me. So I haven't figured out how to fix that. I'm Chris Tuck. I'm running for mayor. As many of you know me, I served on the Alaska State Legislature for the last 14 years. Prior to that, I served on the Anchorage School District School Board for 3 years. My whole political career has been really focused a lot on education. and economy. And of course, the key to a strong economy is making sure that we have affordable, reliable energy. And so, but go back all the way back to 1993, serving on the Anchorage School District curriculum development team for K through 6, and then Education Workforce Advisory Committee for the municipality before getting elected to the school board. I wasn't planning on leaving the legislature to run for mayor. I was leaving the legislature because my 8-year-old daughter wants her daddy back at home. And with all those sessions and special sessions, she just wasn't having enough daddy time. And then driving her to dance one day, she said, "Daddy, why there's so many people living in tents? How come they don't have a home?" Well, unfortunately, she sees what we all see, and that is we have a growing homeless population here in Anchorage as well as throughout our state. We're number 7th in the nation per capita for homeless populations. We actually, number 1's DC, but we're actually have a worse homeless population than Seattle does and Washington State. And so we also have a very dysfunctional city government that's happening right now. And I've been very fortunate to be put in some very powerful leadership positions to be able to demonstrate my skills and abilities. One of those is bringing people together, bringing people of different diversity, different backgrounds, different age groups, different party affiliation, and getting them all marching in the same direction. I did that originally as a union organizer, and then I was able to put together the first coalition, tripartisan coalition in the state house of Alaska Independents, Alaska Republicans, and Alaska Democrats, doing the same thing, putting aside our party partisanship and going back to being Alaskans first and doing what's best for our communities rather than just bickering back and forth. The art of politics isn't just the art of compromise. That could be a component of it, but the art of politics really is the art of possibility. We can have it all. You can have yours and I can have mine. It doesn't have to be this or that when we work together. I truly believe in the unlimited potential of people working together. Truly, that is power. I know that together we are smarter, together we are stronger. And it's going to take, in the spirit of togetherness, all of us working together to get Anchorage back on track. I know we can make Anchorage a place that we can all be proud of. But again, it takes more participation. One of the things I was really striving to do while serving the legislature, because remember, our legislature got raided back in 2006 by the FBI. A lot of people went to jail. It was to restore faith in government once again. And I had some buyer's remorse going from the school district over to the legislature, because even though you don't get a whole lot of recognition or a whole lot of appreciation being on school board, it was very rewarding work. And I went from that to the most adolescent organization you'll ever get involved in, and that's the Alaska State Legislature. However, now it's our city municipal government between the mayor and the assembly. And I ran into LB Gray Jackson, Senator Jackson, down in Hawaii 2 Decembers ago. And we bumped into each other. She goes, "Hey, let's go to dinner." So we went to dinner later on that night, and we started sharing all the problems that we have with the state, all the problems that we're having in the municipality. She had served on the assembly, and she was actually the finance director for the assembly for about 13 years prior to that. And we started talking about the problems. She looked at me, she goes, "Chris, you're the one that can make it happen. You need to consider running for mayor." And I was like, whoa, LB. I said, "I'm not there. I got other things I got going on. You know, I plan on taking a break for a little while, but then I promised that I would keep an open mind towards it." I said, "But I'm only 2% there." But then slowly it kind of built up on me. If I try to get other people to run who I know can really make a difference, but we can't solve the problems that we have right now relying on the people that got us in this situation in the first place. It is going to have to take someone that can come in, take action, take charge, and restore faith in our government, making our community efforts succeed, bringing people together, because not one person is going to be able to solve it. It's going to take all of us to do that. We need to make sure we have a shared vision. I do have my vision for Anchorage, but I know through active listening and productive dialogue, we'll come up with some really good solutions for Anchorage. And that way people know what their role is, how they can participate, and how they can share in the successes when we make it happen. I am one of those type of people that if I was ever a comedian, I'd be one that would interact with an audience and not just monologue. So I'd like to open it up for any questions that people have for me if they have any questions. And for someone that did ask, I think you do have time to go to the bathroom if you'd like.
We did have a question about the permanent fund,
Oh, sure.
but I don't have the specifics yet, so it'll take a few minutes for the chat to catch up.
Okay. Well, while the chat is catching up, I'll just share with you that I've been a big advocate for the permanent fund dividend. Historically, over the last 40 years, the earnings reserve, so we have the corpus of the fund, and then we have the earnings from that fund that goes into the earnings reserve. So anytime we sell something off, or we realize the earnings for that, it goes automatically in the earnings reserve. There is no way politicians can get into the corpus of the fund because that is only by a vote of the people. It's constitutionally protected. However, the earnings reserve, all it takes is 50% plus one of the full legislature to get into that. Historically, it's been paid out for dividends and for inflation proofing the corpus of the fund. Well, anytime there's a loss of income to pay for government, I see that as an income tax. And one of the easiest ways to take care of the budgets that we have right now is to go after that earnings reserve. It's a pot of money there. It only takes 50% vote to get into it. However, I see that as one of the most unfair taxes that you can tax my 8-year-old daughter, the same as my fixed income mother, the same as my multimillionaire friend. There's no fairness in that. How can they all be taxed the same way? And so I've always been a big promoter, as Hammond was, of making sure that we had an income tax, one that's fair, and then protect the permanent fund dividend, because we have this pesky constitutional clause of interstate commerce with the U.S. Constitution. And I bring that up because many people are saying, well, why can't we tax these out-of-state workers that come up here and get jobs up on the North Slope and in the mining industry and the construction industry, and they take that money and they leave and never to return, or they spend their money elsewhere? Well, how can we tax those people? Well, we can't because of that Constitution clause. But what if we tax everybody the same, but then those who are Alaska residents got a rebate to where we just effectively only taxing people from out of state? Well, that's what we did in 2017 when I was the majority leader, when people said there was no way this coalition was going to be maintained more than 90 days. We not only maintained more than 90 days, but during that 120-day session, we were able to pass the first fiscal plan in Alaska state history. And that was a myriad of things: oil taxes, fishing taxes, cuts, and income tax. And I thought I was going to be committing political suicide by implementing an income tax and voting for one. But surprisingly, I got reelected and continue to advocate for a more fair method of providing government services than one that just takes it equally out of the dividend. Did that question come rolling in?
It hasn't yet, but we have another question in the
Sure.
meantime. How will you deal with the high cost of energy?
Well, we need affordable energy. When you look at economic development, there's two factors that really play a role. One of them is your education system. The key to a strong economy is education. And then, of course, second is affordable energy. I introduced a bill to make Alaska the testing ground for all renewable energies that the federal government was exploring and implementing. If we can do it here in Alaska with the high cost of energy that we have in rural Alaska, then we can start working on the economies of scale and making it cost effective for everywhere else in the world. And but it's through technologies that we save the planet, not the elimination of technologies. So we have to keep pushing. One of the things that we need, what I would like to do, is have more innovation in this area through our university, really investing in our university in looking at better ways that we can deliver affordable energy that's renewable, that is long sustaining. We still have a lot of problems that we have with wind. We still have a lot of problems with solar, and a lot of it has to do with the battery storage. We do, but there's new technologies out there. There's geothermal that we can be exploring. There's also tidal that we can explore, and also a lot of small turbines in river systems that we should be exploring as well.
Thank you. One last question. Governor Dunleavy has vetoed the education package, and the lawmakers failed to override it by one vote. How would you restore education funding for Alaskans?
Well, it's not over yet. They still have a little bit of session to go. There's still an appropriations bill once a deal is made to get something across the finish line. As I said before, it doesn't have to be this versus that. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. The failure that happened was people not communicating with one another. I think the governor made it very clear what he wanted to see. The legislature thought that they could, have the votes and overpower. But I think that when it came down with that bill being passed and then out of the House, I think there should have been more dialogue between the two branches of government, that being the legislative branch and the executive branch. That needs to happen. We would have never passed the Alaska Reads Act in my last, that was actually the last thing I did serving as majority leader, was passing the Alaska Reads Act. It would have never happened if we didn't partner with people and really make that a much better build than what it really started off with. And we had buy-in from everybody. One of the things I learned in serving in government is that you cannot get anything done without building relationships. That's number one. And to build relationships, I developed my second R, and that is treating people with respect, but more importantly, respect for the institutions that you serve. And then, of course, the third one is your own reputation, making your yays, yays, and your nays, nays, saying, do what you're going to do. And if you have a problem, or if you change your mind, go back to the person and say, hey, I can't support your legislation anymore because I'm afraid it's going to do this or do that, or I got some additional information you may not be aware of. But open communication is really important to that whole process as well. And then I came up with my fourth R when I ended up being the chief negotiator of the FY15 and FY16 budgets. And that is relax. Everything's going to be okay. Sure, we were going down to a government shutdown, but don't worry, everything's going to work out. That's the faith I have right now. I don't think anyone's going to give up. I think that people are going to be able to, through dialogue and through having discussions, start working together on a comprehensive education package that we all can be proud of. Any further questions? Did I lose everybody? No, we're still there?
Still here.
All right, excellent.
Well, thank you for that and all of that great relevant information. We're going to go back to our candidates. We're going to have one more question, and then we're going to allow the candidates to give their closing statement. We have some issues with weather coming in, and want to make sure that everyone has ample time to answer and kind of weigh in on the subjects. But there was a question that came in on the chat that spoke to the Electoral College. And we wanted to give both candidates an opportunity to give their thoughts on the Electoral College and where they stand. And we're going to go to Jasmine first to get her thoughts on that. And then we're going to go back to Brittany. Go right ahead, Jasmine.
You just want my thoughts on the Electoral College?
Yes. Where do you stand on
years,
if we should continue, if we should discontinue? What are your thoughts currently on the Electoral College? Just how it came.
So thank you for clarifying. The Electoral College was a racist mechanism invented by bigots and racists to make sure that people who were 3/5 a person did not overtake the majority. I think that we should abolish the Electoral College. However, when Hillary Clinton lost the election, people went to work, and we now have something called the National Interstate Voter Compact, where a bunch of states they're 4 states shy from it being federally ratified, have agreed to give their popular vote, the person who wins their popular vote, all of their Electoral College votes. And that does help us in this current election, which gives third parties a chance to finally win.
Thank you for that. Brittany, your thoughts?
I do think the Electoral College is extremely outdated and needs to be abolished. It's not rigged like the people say it is. That's what the media wants you to believe. In every state, if the popular vote is for a third party or independent candidate, the Electoral College of that state is supposed to vote for that popular vote. Faithless electors is actually very rare. Trump kind of exploded that concept during his re-election campaign as a propaganda method to work up the American people and turn us against each other, and to make sure that the two parties stay in power, and the two parties are backed by the same corporations. So we need to be careful in allowing that type of rhetoric to take seed in our minds. We need to make sure that we're actually researching how these different bodies work. And each candidate gets electoral college representation that we pick ourselves, or that parties pick themselves for their candidate. So we do have that representation. It's actually required for ballot access. Even as a write-in candidate, you need your electors to represent you in the electoral college so that they are there to be a voice for the popular vote of that state. But we do need to abolish it overall. I like ranked choice voting or other types of voting like that, a national popular vote. Something else needs to be reformed.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to give our two candidates 4 minutes to have their closing statements. And we're going to go ahead and let Brittany start us off with closing statements.
Education in elections is extremely important. And my platform does focus on educating people on how voting actually works, how a president is elected, and what the president can actually do. And one thing we can't do is pull money out of the air. So don't fall into these false promises of free housing, a living wage, free health care. Congress controls the purse strings of our country. Congress is the one who sets the budget for the year, and the executive branch has to work within that budget. Congress has too much power, in my opinion, but we have to be realistic in what we expect the president to do. We cannot control gas prices. We cannot give you a living wage, but we can create grants with the money that is allocated for the year by Congress, like an education grant for schools to keep creative arts within their schools, diversity grants to make sure that staffing is diverse and they get grants for having a diverse staff, making sure that there's housing grants and housing available. But it wouldn't be able to be for free because Congress will never allocate that budget unless you vote people in who want the same things that we do. So don't fall for false promises. Educate yourselves. This is big. Educate yourselves on what each branch can do. Don't rely on the news. Don't go off of what candidates, even myself, tell you. Educate yourself. The information is out there. It is free. Please look it up and go for somebody who will actually tell you what the president can and cannot do and do the actual job, like myself.
Thank you. Jasmine, you have 4 minutes.
Yes. So one of the things that I want people to keep in mind, there is tons of money for the things that we want our elected officials to do. The same way Joe Biden was able to approve emergency weapon sales to Israel, bypassing Congress, is the same way the president has the ability to provide you with housing, healthcare, education, and universal basic income. However, presidents who have skin that is very different from mine have chosen not to do that. A lot of people don't understand because since the Patriot Act, the president has gotten more and more powers. I understand how we think that government should work because we all had that high school civics class and we all heard that Christopher Columbus came to America and he sailed in ocean blue. The reality is very different from what you learned in high school. I appreciate the fact that I'm supposed to go through the Congress and the Senate, but FDR couldn't do it. And Joe Biden isn't doing it. We have a lot of people that say we can't do things when it's time to do them for the American public. But it's really weird that we are not trying to make sure that our government takes care of us. The same way that we can send weapons to Israel is the same way we can provide you with housing, healthcare, and education. And anyone that tells you that these things can't happen have not been paying attention to the way our government currently works. I do understand that there's an ideology and there's a way that we think government should work, but the reality is government officials do things for corporations and rich people all the time. It is time that an elected official actually does something that works for you. In a Sherman administration, you're not getting utopia. You're getting your basic needs met: housing, healthcare, and education. The same things we already provide for Israel. The same thing we already supposedly provide for our enlisted troops. It's time that we provided those to you. We have the power. We just don't have the will. Vote Sherman and Blue Bear or visit jasminesherman.com to schedule an appointment with me to talk about any questions you might have or concerns you might want to share. Peace, love, and hair grease, you guys.
Well, thank you. We thank both of our candidates for their time and their candidness. We're going to go ahead and turn it back over to Meda, and she's going to close us out for the evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Montre. And I just wanted to give a thank you to Brittany and Jasmine for being here today and sharing their candid visions of presidency and how to represent the American people. As we move forward at this time, we know that climate change is real. The data is in. We do need more data and science on the statistics of our communities and how they'll be affected and how best we can support the American people. We also need to remember that the indigenous people, the first people of these lands, have lived through climate change before because we've been here so long. And there are lessons to learn from these spaces and how to be in relationship with that ecoregion or part of the country that you're in. Here in Alaska, we are experiencing climate change 3 to 4 times faster anywhere in the rest of the United States. We are also the only Arctic state that makes the United States an Arctic country. So as we look at this transition with climate change, it actually creates an impetus for us to review ourselves as humans and our actions that we've taken thus far to get ourselves into this space, because the same kind of thinking that got us here isn't going to get us out of here. However, what is America? America is a dynamic, complex, beautiful tapestry of people from all over the world. Anchorage, Alaska is the second most diverse city in the United States, and behind Atlanta, Georgia, who is the most diverse city in the United States. This is something that we know how to do. However, there are narratives out there that want to stay alive and want to still be the center of attention. But if we look at the numbers, we have 38% of Americans registered as Democrat. We have 30% registered as Republicans. We have 27% registered as independent or undeclared. We do not have a two-party system. In reality, it's an old narrative that's being just, spoken about. And so it's, where do we put our money? Where do we put our dollars? And here in Alaska, we have started ranked choice voting. It is something that we're looking forward to because it does change the dynamics. It does change the ability to leverage your will and your vote. So this is an exciting time to be alive, and it is all of us to move forward together so that we can transition into a vibrant, healthy future. So I want to thank everyone who was here tonight, who joined us online, and who may be joining us in the future watching these recordings. Please like this page and share these videos. Remind your friends and neighbors to vote when it is time to vote. And also watch the platforms, have the conversations. We're told growing up, don't talk about religion and politics. Now's the time. We have to talk about it. And if we're going to transition again into that future, we have to be able to vision it. We have to buy into it. And we have to join together and create that movement that we want to see. So please join us again in 2 weeks and have a great night.
Habitual. Find God and religion, status with salvation. No one, nobody who gives you power to grab. No one inside the sky, becoming all mine. Hands are free.